It's that time of year again as we prepare to leave, well, begin to end the year and actually begin to end the decade. And already there's lots of photography and camera related videos talking about what has happened, what's been released through 2019, what to get the photographer in your life, those usual kind of gift videos, which are some quite often really good and very informative to the hobbyist photographer and enthusiast, the basic consumer like myself, to know what is out there, what's available, and what you can save up for. They're all always very handy, but what I want to talk about is cameras and really basically kind of the future, particularly of Sony cameras, because it certainly appears to me, as I said, as a hobbyist, as a basic consumer of photography and camera related stuff, that Sony are becoming the market leaders. And I know there was a recent sales report from Japan that a lot of the channels have been talking about, and the numbers there seem that Sony have been taken over. And certainly I think in regards to what I've seen, there's been more promotion of Sony. What I think Sony has still been pushed more than other, whether they've spent millions and millions more on PR and publicity, whether it's just been a case that they've got their mirrorless cameras like the Sony A7 III, which I'll talk about in a moment, out to market before Nikon and Canon's offerings. Whether that's, again, that might be an economic argument, or obviously getting your things to first, you're getting your products first to market means you will be more successful. But regardless of whether that's one of the points, Sony's cameras have been met with critical and consumer acclaim, I think, over the past couple of years. And I think, especially looking at things like the mirrorless revolution, as it's called, I think looking from, say, about 2015 to even 2020, this 5-6 year period, I think we'll look back on this time and see that, wow, this was a great time for camera technology, because the cameras that we have right now, they're filled and packed with features. I mean, just very, very quickly talking about the Sony A7 III, because, and again, that's why I'm talking about Sony, because this is the system that I've bought into since July of 2018. I've been using this camera, and it's an excellent little camera. Really looking forward to using it in the next couple of years, and hopefully getting a couple more lenses next year. There's a couple I've got my eye on, but it's going to take a long time. Again, that's another story. Just due to finances and everything. Since I got this camera, it's been a really good camera, and it's packed with features, because like I said, the cameras out right now, they're fantastic, and I know there may be purists out there that really kind of want cameras that only have the exposure triangle of shutter speed, ISO and aperture, and they use maybe cameras kind of like Leica cameras. Leica cameras are more about the experience and about taking photographs and composition, and yes, they're good quality. Obviously, I've been watching a lot of Three Blind Men and an Elephant recently. Hugh Brownstone is working with Leica a little bit and loves his Leica cameras, and you also get great quality with pretty much any brand out there right now. There's some really good cameras, and obviously different people like different things, which is why there's so many brands. If there was one perfect camera out there, everybody would buy it. But quickly, you can look at cameras like the Sony A7 III, because many of the brands have similar features. They're hybrid shooters, so you can do photograph and video. You can have interval shooting, both video and photo. There's things like dual memory card slots, which is becoming standard on a lot of cameras. So you can back up your photos or continue shooting onto another memory card once you fill one up. You can divert different formats of RAW and JPEG or photo and video to separate memory cards. There's different customization options in the menu systems and how you lay out the camera. So you could press custom button 1 to access file format, custom button 2 for drive mode, custom button 3 for to access interval shooting and begin that. Or these cameras, one good thing about Sony having extensive menu systems is that they're so customizable. That is one of the reasons, one of the things that attracted me to the Sony camera of the A7 III, because there's such a wide variety of customizable options, and which obviously everything is designed in cameras nowadays, and it should be, really, in my opinion. And I know this is a bit nitpicky or a bit, oh, I want, but customizable options on cameras should be something that is at least thought about, or at least partially included in cameras, because obviously people trying to remember different menus and where settings are, etc. Is very tough, especially for consumers. A lot of people, and I know cameras and lenses, etc. are very expensive, but they're not always going. People are not always going. If it becomes, even if it's a great camera, if it becomes really, really fiddly and frustrating to use, it's going to be off-putting for a lot of people. Also, EVFs as well. Very quickly, being able to change your settings and see how that affects the image that you want to take is phenomenal as well. So these cameras, fantastic cameras, and I think Sony, like I said, the appearance to me personally is that Sony are currently the market leader in cameras. They are leading the way, and looking what they've done recently, and looking what potential of next year, and I'll stick my neck out a little bit, I think Sony are moving in the right way. I think what their approach is currently is the right way. I know a lot of people weren't happy, and I've seen a couple of videos where people say that Sony want people to call their their A9 series the Alpha 9 series now, so that's what I'll try and call it. The Alpha 9 series, they're putting out good cameras. These are more, obviously, especially with the price tag of doubled compared to the A7 III, that's more aimed towards the professionals. But the A9 Alpha 9 is a good camera. I think it's been released to critical and consumer acclaim, and I think it's a really good camera. Although I'm sure there probably is a YouTube video out there, because I've never used one, but I'm sure there's a YouTube video, there must be surely, about the Alpha 9 from when it first came out compared to what it is now, and shows the exact differences in firmware and shutter speed, or whatever the differences are, because a lot of people have said that camera has been transformed with firmware, and that's maybe another video for another thing that I've wanted to make for months, about firmware and different technologies and that. But one thing that's certainly been clear, that camera's been a success. They've sold many units, and it's been a very, generally it's been, like I said, a very welcomed release. It's a lot of, I don't have sales figures, so I don't know how many, but it's been certainly sold well. And one of the complaints when the Alpha 9 Mark II came out recently was that people were complaining that it's basically a refined Alpha 9, which, again, I'm sticking my neck out on this. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I honestly don't. I think that Sony doing it this way is the correct way right now of doing it. A lot of people expect cameras, each new camera, to make an enormous leap forward and to bring something new and miraculous to the table. And that's not always the case, and that's not always a bad thing. I think the way that Sony did it, releasing the Alpha 9 Mark II, being a refined Alpha 9 with the newest firmware, some quicker autofocus, which has proved excellent in Sony cameras, including the A9 A7 III. That's been quite decent autofocus. I think that is a step forward to refine your cameras, because like I said, the Alpha 9 has been met with critical acclaim. It's not as if Sony released that camera and everybody went, oh no, what are they doing? What are they doing? That's a horrible camera. What a pile of junk that it's a hunk of junk. Why have I invested my money in this? It's been generally received as a very, very excellent camera. And I think releasing the Alpha 9 Mark II as a refined version of that is a good step forward, because I don't think there was any reason for Sony to go back to the drawing board and make a completely new camera. Let's start from completely scratch again. Let's go from scratch. Let's clear the board. Let's make a brand new camera, which they may do in the future. They may eventually get to the point where, well, we've done all we can with this model, and we'll go on to the Alpha 10 or what Alpha 10 series or whatever. That may be well in the future, if several years in the future at least. I would say hopefully maybe a decade or so, depending on where they're able to kind of process and develop the technology that you use in these cameras. But I don't think it was a bad thing at all, because there is no looking at the early videos, because there's not generally been enormous amount of videos where the people review that camera extensively, mostly due to it being refined. Okay, yeah, I said it is a refined version of the Alpha 9. There's not been people reviewing it as if it was a brand new camera, unfortunately, a little bit. 'Cause some of the camera videos that I've seen have treated it like, oh well, you know all about the A9, so just let's look at this as a slight step forward, instead of taking a look at it as a brand new camera, which I understand to a degree. But Sony didn't need to go back to the drawing board. They didn't need to completely change the wheel, change how they're doing things. They had a good basics. They have good solid foundations for that Mark II. So they refined the firmware processing capability, and I think that's the good way to do it. There is that saying of, if something's not broken, why try and fix it? And Sony haven't done that with the Alpha 9 Mark II, and I think that's the correct way of doing things. And I will also say, if that is what's going to happen next year, that's a good way of going about it as well. They will hopefully have people in the background working on, okay, what can we change? What can we make different about our cameras? So we've pretty much possibly reached the pinnacle. The Alpha 9 Mark II has been also received very warmly, ignoring the fact again it's a refined original Alpha 9. It's, and who knows what they're going to introduce in firmware, but they're more than capable cameras, 20 frames per second and quick autofocus and all that kind of thing. I know again it's more aimed towards professionals, but I'm sure they'll have people in the background thinking, right, well, what can we change? What different, what have we got, and what can we change? What can we improve? Sony I watch multiple videos where people say Sony are listening to feedback. Sony have changed this. The grip, as an example, the grip on the Alpha 7 Mark III is relatively small, and it doesn't cause a problem to me, but people were, okay, this grip is not the best. And so when they released the A7R Mark IV, they changed it to a more, I believe it's a bigger grip on it. I can't remember whether it's an Alpha 9 style grip, but anyway, they enlarged the grip of the A7R4, and they kept the big grip on the Alpha 9 Mark II. And there's a couple other minor things that they've done, which people say, well, they are. You see it in a few videos when they talk about the Sony's cameras. Oh wow, Sony do listen to feedback and they do try and improve things. And again, I'm sticking my neck out here a little bit. I will say that next year, it's been rumoured for a few months that Sony will make some kind of announcement or some kind of reveal or do some kind of press conference thing in February. So about 2 or 3 months, depending on how you look at it. Because we are really in the early stages of December right now, relatively. I honestly think if they take the Alpha 9 Mark II and do what they did with the original Alpha 9 and compact it, what they did with the original Alpha 9 is to kind of compact it, cut a few features and make the A7 III. If they do the same with the Alpha 9 Mark II, which I know this all sounds confusing, but if they take the Alpha 9 Mark II, do the same, slice and dice it a little bit, cut a little bit of the features, and create a more compact entry-level A7 IV out of that. So what they did with the original A9, they made the A7 III. If they do that with the Alpha 9 Mark II, and they make an A7 Mark IV, I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't be angry. I wouldn't be... I wouldn't have a problem with it, basically. I think that if that's what happens, if that's what we end up seeing, it's basically a trimmed, refined version of an Alpha 9 Mark II being called the A7 IV, I don't have a problem with that, honestly. I think that would be a good step forward for Sony. They do, and I've said before, I think the 2 year window, the 2 year kind of rotation or renewal of cameras is too soon, because save up, you get that camera, then you begin to get a handle on it, depending on how much of a opportunity you have to get out and use that camera. Within a relatively short period of time, you're now met with adverts and rumours. I check out a few rumour websites like Sony Alpha Rumours, and you'll see a continual, well, we're hearing rumours that Sony are releasing, like I said, I've got the A7 III, we're hearing rumours, and a couple of websites have got detailed kind of specifications that may well form this A7 IV. They will say, "Oh, we're hearing rumours about a possible release in February of the A7 Mark IV," and so you have a very short kind of space of time of getting the camera, getting used to it. I'm not saying you immediately have to jump to the next camera. You do not need to do that, and I'm not looking to jump to the A7 Mark IV. I'm looking to use the A7 III for the next couple of years at least. I've been with it for 17 months, and I'm intending to use it for the next several years, hopefully. So I'm not going to jump. I might get eventually, depending on if the 2 year rotation keeps up, maybe the A7 V or 6. Maybe I'm looking way into the future. But I think if they do and refine the Alpha 9 Mark II and make the A7 IV, I don't think that would be too bad step, because the capabilities, the features that Sony have in their cameras right now are pretty good, and they've got a really good foundation. Even if people are not impressed with them pushing forward, I still think that Nikon, and especially Canon, as another camera conspiracy channel has, and I know people like Jared Polin are saying that Canon are maybe the sleepers. They're maybe, which to be honest, I can't agree with her at this time. I don't think Canon, I don't know, they've got the, well, one camera conspiracy says, terms it the Canon cripple hammer, and and he says that he thinks that Canon are deliberately crippling their cameras. Why, I don't know, and perhaps Canon are the sleepers, but right this time I don't think they are. I think Sony are well ahead of their competitors anyway. Without going on too much of a tangent, I think Sony are ahead of their competitors right now. Nikon, Canon, etc. have got a little bit of ways to try and catch up. I'm not saying that they're bad cameras. I've not used Nikon's offerings or Canon's EOS R or Fujifilms, but and you can get these days. The cameras are good enough. I've been speaking about Sony on this video, but the cameras from most of these major brands, Nikon's, Canon's, Fujifilms of this world, you could go out and get excellent video and photos off any of these brands. I'm pretty confident. But what I've seen on lots of different videos and websites, you could get really, really exceptional photos from any of these brands. But I think Sony, at least appears to me, and from my experience, they are the market leaders right now. So I think if they could just refine those professional cameras into their what they're calling the entry level cameras, which are the A7 series, the 3, and now I think it would fit in well with this 2 year rotation that we do see the A7 IV announced in February. I think that is what will happen. I can see this. I can see Sony. Some people may say, "Oh, they're resting on the laurels," but I think Sony right now are laying really good foundations. Right now in 2000, like I said, around 2014 to 2015, even to 2020, I think they're laying really good and solid foundations when it comes to their camera capabilities and technology. Possibly to make that leap forward. Perhaps they're wanting these cameras to be a leap off point, but I think they're really making it good. They're exceptional cameras. Like I said, critically and consumer wise, these cameras have been met with acclaim and been very welcomed, and a lot of people have been buying into the Sony system lately, of course, myself included. And not that my opinion is really, my buying, what I buy really affects many people, but Sony, I think, are laying really decent, good, solid foundation in terms of developing their camera technology. And I said I wouldn't be surprised if we see the A7 IV a refined, slightly toned down version of the Alpha 9 Mark II being announced in February next year. But if it is, I said, I wouldn't have a problem with it because I think Sony are doing really well in what their offerings are in their cameras, in their camera technology, and if, like many people said, they are listening to the consumer and they are acting on all the feedback they're receiving, well, hey, isn't that not a bit of an ideal company that photographers want? For people to listen to them and help improve their cameras and the technology. I mean, that's what people want these days, isn't it? For camera companies to listen to them